orphanage and youth residence were not far from where I lived, but they were tucked out of sight beyond a sign that warned others to stay away. My brother and I had explored the ghostly remnants of one of our state's mental asylums, but we never ventured near the boys' home. We perceived it, and the boys who lived there, as different and dangerous, clearly off limits to us. It came as a shock to me to learn that some parents didn't care what their children did or what happened to their children. I learned this in my first home visit. I did not plan this visit, and it was one of my most embarrassing childhood moments. A friend and I were walking along a nearby lake when a boy called out to us from a small dock, "Hey, would you guys like to try out my boat?" I didn't recognize the boy, but the idea of borrowing a small boat on a hot summer's day was too enticing to resist. We joined him on the dock. My friend climbed in the boat and I followed, naive as ever, not questioning who this boy was or whether it was really his boat. As I leaned over to climb in, our new friend rammed me from the side and I fell headlong into the water. This, of course, was a major insult, warranting a pummeling by the codes of 10-year-old boys. Even though the water was warm, I knew I looked like a fool. After pulling myself out of the water, the only thing to do was to chase him down, teach him a lesson, and try to regain my pride. He had a head start, but I kept gaining on him, probably because his periodically turning around to make faces at me slowed him down. I followed him onto a dead-end street at the fringe of our neighborhood, an area served by a different elementary school from my own. I was only a few paces behind when he grabbed his front door and ran inside. The screen door slammed in front of my face. Trained to be polite, I knocked. "What is it?" barked a gruff voice. "What do you want?" I couldn't see inside, so I opened the door and stepped in. Across from me in the living room sat a man, probably in his 40s, sitting on an old recliner and watching a baseball game on an old black-and-white TV. A stained and dirty T-shirt barely covered his bulging midriff, and he sported several days' growth of a scruffy beard. I was surprised that his hair was long in this era of crew cuts, straggling over his ears and down the back of his neck. "Your son knocked me in the lake," I muttered, as I checked out the ripped and stained furniture, beer bottles, overflowing ashtrays, and dirt on the floor. I didn't know anyone who lived like this. The place stank of mold and cigarettes. "So knock him around! Kick the shit out of him! Knock the little prick's head off for all I care!" My brief plea for adult intervention was over. This man obviously didn't subscribe to the lessons my teachers taught us each year about children going to the adult in charge for help in a conflict. I walked back out of the house and onto the gravel driveway. My adversary appeared outside, standing by an old, beat-up pickup truck. His eyes glared, and his lips pursed. "Come on! What you waiting for?" he snarled, raising his fists like a boxer. I was a couple inches taller and at least a year older, but I was a skinny kid. He was probably a better fighter. I weighed the odds, but my anger was largely gone and no one I knew was watching. It struck me that this was not my fight. Chase me/fight me was his game, not mine. I had been stupid enough to become a pawn in this boy's life. Sooner or later he had to go back inside to the surly man in the recliner, the cigarette butts on the floor, and the stench. I had never seen him before and would probably never see him again. I yelled a few of my worst curses, quite pathetic by this boy's standards, I'm sure, and left. I was ashamed still, mad at myself for being tricked. I didn't understand it then, but in one quick tumble into the lake, I had become immersed into the fear, shame, and rage of this boy's life.